Boomers think that Gen Z is lazy. Gen Z thinks that boomers are out of touch. I recently watched a video where they put boomers and Gen Z in a room together and they asked them questions about each other. It got 2.4 million views. You know why? Because the gap in understanding was shocking. I can see that same gap in my corporate training room every single week, and I've lived it at home. I am a boomer, the youngest of the baby boomers, and I have a Gen Z child. I have spent over 20 years training human behavior in corporate America. Here's something that changed everything for me. My Gen Z came into my life at age 6. Her mother had gone through a serious crisis, and I stepped in to raise her full time. I had all of this knowledge about human psychology, about conditioning, and suddenly I was watching it happen in real time in front of me with my own kid. I watched her go through the end of the imprinting years, the modeling years, the socializing years. I tried to keep the cell phone out of her hands as long as I possibly could. Somebody told me, once you give them the phone, you lose them. And I recognized the possible truth in that. But here's what I learned. Even if your kid does not have a phone, they probably still have an iPad. And even if they do not have an iPad, their friends have phones. The digital world finds them before you ever hand them a device. So Gen Z is the first generation to grow up completely on technology. And that's not just a fun fact. That changes everything about how they are wired. Every human being learns by mimicking. We have mirror neurons, a biological mechanism that causes us to copy what we observe. Monkey see, monkey do. Literally, when I grew up, I mimicked the people around me, my parents, my teachers, my coaches. Gen Z grew up mimicking influencers, YouTubers, TikTokers, Snapchatters, people specifically designed to be mimicked by, platforms specifically designed to keep people watching. The people who run these platforms are the most brilliant psychologists on the planet. They know exactly how to keep a human being engaged, and they've been doing it to an entire generation since birth. So now, let's add dopamine into the equation. Every like, every follower, every notification, that is a dopamine hit. Gen Z grew up in the most dopamine-rich environment in human history. Instant reward, constant feedback, always on. So when they arrive in the workplace, where reward is slow, feedback is infrequent, and patience is required, it feels like a foreign environment to them. That is not laziness. That is conditioning. There is a difference. Here's something else I observed raising my kid. A pattern I also see in my corporate training rooms. Some Gen Z kids start collecting identities. I have ADHD. I have anxiety. I have body dysmorphia. Now, I'm not dismissing any of those things. Some of them are real diagnosed conditions, but some of them are absorbed from social media. And what I have observed as a parent is that the path of least resistance can become medication. My perception is that sometimes we treat the symptom instead of the cause. And when a kid ends up on multiple medications, each one with more cautions than benefits, and nobody really knows how they all work together, now you have part of a generation that's not only programmed by technology, they also may be numbed by pharmacology. That is not a judgment. That is an observation. And it matters when we talk about work ethic, because here's what I want boomers to understand. These kids are not stupid. They are some of the most informed human beings that have ever walked this planet. They have more data at their fingertips than any generation in history. What they can lack is integrated wisdom, the kind that only comes from doing, from failing, from getting back up. As a trainer, I always say the learning is in the doing. You can watch 1,000 videos about riding a bike. You still have to fall off before you really learn. Gen Z has the information. They just have not always had the experience to back it up yet. And at a subconscious level, some of them know that. This is where they can be defensive. They can have imposter syndrome. Sometimes they overcompensate with the worldly knowledge they have because they're actually afraid because they don't have the real world experience. They're searching for themselves and they want to understand. Now, here's where it gets personal. When my daughter first came into my life when she was 6 years old, the woman that was with me at the time, now my wife, said something to me that I will never forget. She said, "Do you want to make a difference in this little girl's life?" I said, "Yes, beautiful, of course." She said, "When you're with her, be there with her." She looked at me and said, "Do you know what I mean?" I said, "Yeah, baby, you mean be present." She said, "Yes, Otherwise, she's going to spend her entire life looking for something that was never demonstrated to her. That stopped me cold. I've been meditating 3 times a day for 25 years, training my brain to be quiet. The same way I trained my body when I was a competitive bodybuilder. You do not do 100 crunches and see abs the very next day. You do them consistently for 6 months, and then one day you start to notice they are present. The same thing is true for being present. It works the same way. It is a discipline. I made a commitment to be as present as I possibly could with that little girl, and that connection is paid off in ways I cannot fully measure. Here's what I know as a sales trainer. The first thing you have to do before you can sell anything, before you can teach anything, before you can lead anyone is connect. And you cannot connect as well if you are not present. It is impossible. But when you are present with someone, they feel it. And when you are absent, they feel that too. Gen Z especially, they have finely tuned radars for authenticity. They can feel fake connection from a mile away, but genuine presence, genuine interest in who they are and what they think, that lands. Their faces soften, they open up, and they contribute. I've watched it happen in my training room every week I have a class. So here's what I want to say to every boomer manager, every boomer parent, every boomer who is frustrated with Gen Z at work. Stop trying to manage from the top down. Stop trying to manage from your ego. Stop labeling them as lazy because they work differently than you did. Connect with them first. Find out what they care about. Find out what they want their future to look like. Give them reasons to trust you, because here's the truth. Without connection, there is no influence. None. You can have all the authority in the world and zero influence. Or you can have a genuine connection and influence someone's trajectory. Every interaction you have with a Gen Z employee is a deposit or a withdrawal from that connection account. Every time you judge them, you make a withdrawal. Every time you show up present, curious, and human, you make a deposit. And when you've built enough deposits, you now have influence. That is when you can challenge them. This is when you can push them. This is when they will actually hear you. And to Gen Z, give us boomers the same grace. We did not grow up with technology. Some of us are genuinely lost with it, but we've built things. We've learned things the hard way. We have wisdom that only comes from living it. And that is not worthless. This is valuable. And the more we work together, your data and our experience, the more powerful that combination becomes. Eventually, Gen Z is going to be driving this planet. The question is not whether they are ready. The question is whether we are willing to understand them well enough and connect with them deeply enough to hand it over to them. Some people call Gen Z the snowflake generation. I am not saying that to deride them. I'm talking about transformation. A snowflake melts under pressure. A diamond is built by it. The goal is not to protect people from pressure. The goal is to help them use it. This is true for Gen Z in the workplace, and honestly, it's true for every boomer who is struggling to bridge that gap too. We are not here to avoid pressure. We are here to handle it. We are building strength, and we're turning snowflakes into diamonds.